Welcome everyone to Grandmothers Live Online. I'm Gabby Judd, the coordinator of Grandmothers for Refugees, New South Wales. A special welcome and thank you to Jane Caro today, our guest speaker. Before we sort of proceed, I'll hand over to Barbara, who'll do the acknowledgement and any housekeeping.
Thanks, Gabby.
Okay.
We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which we live. We pay respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and recognise and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal and Torres Strait peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and the waters of New South Wales. Now, firstly, we are recording this session today. And all our questions, we ask that you put them in chat. We won't have people live, we're going to use the chat function. So put it in chat and we'll either answer as we go or at the end, but we'll try and get to as many as we can. Okay,
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. And the recording will be uploaded to the Grandmothers YouTube channel. Yes, so you can share that around if people couldn't make it.
I've actually put that address in the chat, the address of the YouTube channel.
Thank you. Okay. Jane Caro is a Walkley Award winning Australian columnist, author, novelist, broadcaster, documentary maker, feminist and social commentator. The topic today is why women have to save the world. And I think if anyone, many of us watched Grace Tame and Brittany Higgins yesterday would have to agree with that. There's a lot that needs saving. Our mainly male leaders only seem interested in saving their sort of political skins at the moment. And I also just want to point out some of our members have grandchildren with who identify as transgender or are still sorting out who they are, and we're all horrified by the religious discrimination bill. So there's much to talk about today. So on that note, I'll hand over to Jane. So thank you.
Thank you. And hello, fellow grandmothers. Yeah, look, the world today, I'm sorry, the blokes have had a long go. 2,000 years or more, they've been running the place, and it's a mess. It's a bloody mess. We're staring into an abyss in terms of climate change. I read something the other day that said we're on track for 2 degrees warming, which is going to be catastrophic because people have made a whole lot of commitments at COP26, but nobody's actually living up to them. That's just horrifying and terrifying. And I think it is particularly horrifying and terrifying for grandmothers because, I feel an actual sense of shame when I look at my 2 grandchildren who are age 5 and 3. And I think that when I go, I will not leave them a planet in as good a state as my grandparents left me. And I think that that's a failing of enormous proportions and consequences. And there's not a grandparent on earth who can say that we've managed this planet as well as any generation ahead before us. We've managed it much worse. And we know the generations before us did not have the same level of knowledge about how their actions were affecting our very existence, really. I mean, the planet will survive us. We won't survive our own greed and carelessness. And I do think it is of not just of particular importance to grandmothers, although I do think we are very much engaged in that, but also to women in general, because I think sometimes that one of the reasons we're in this mess is because male culture, so I'm not talking about men. I loved what Grace Tame said yesterday at the National Press Club when she said, men are not the problem.
Yeah.
Abuse of power is the problem. Behaviour is the problem. And I thought beautifully summed up. Exactly. But to some extent, toxic masculinity is the problem because we have been, men in particular, but all of us have been groomed to believe that the earth is there for us to dominate and to use as we wish. and to control and to carve up and to blow up and penetrate and re-sculpt and remake and plunder as we see fit. And these are all very masculine behaviours. And actually what we are going to have to do if we're going to have, if the human race, if our grandchildren are going to have any kind of livable future, is change the way we actually operate and become more collaborative, more nurturing, more aware of how interdependent we are, that we're not the dominators, the penetrators, the miners, we're not that. We are just another mammal trying to exist on this lump of rock that's hurtling through space, and do the best we can to maintain this miracle of a planet that we've been fortunate enough to find ourselves on. And that is actually a change of cultural viewpoint, human understanding of how things work from a very masculinized viewpoint to a more feminized viewpoint. I've long argued that the problem with the world until really incredibly recently, and by recently I mean 5 or 10 years at the most, is that we have been looking at things through one eye. It's a perfectly good eye, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's a male eye. That's how we've seen everything, because we've all been taught to see it that way. And we are only just beginning to open our other eye, which I call a female eye. And then now we are starting to actually just blurrily maybe see things as they actually are. We were literally one-eyed for most of human history, if not really all of it, but for most of it, certainly. And I don't think we're going to get 20/20 vision until we are opening both eyes and using them both equally to see what needs to be done. And when you have a domination mindset, when you have a winner-loser mindset, so, people are either winners or they're losers, and you can see that really clearly in neoliberal philosophy, the resentment of anyone who is poor or doing it tough or unfortunate, this sense in which they must have brought it on themselves, that they're the failing, and that they're losers. I mean, we hear it in Donald Trump's discourse all the time, loser, losers. It's an insult. To be a loser is the worst thing possible. And of course, every woman who is not beautiful and sexy and Donald Trump doesn't actually want to fuck is by definition a loser. So, that's most of us, thank God, actually. Little does he know what a relief that is. Poor old Melania. Anyway, I digress. But the problem is that this winner-loser mindset, which has infiltrated everything, allows us to have valuable people and people we don't think are of any value at all. But on some level, I think there's a knowledge that this is a risky strategy and that those people who are not valuable or we see as not valuable may not enjoy that, and therefore they become a threat to us. And hence, if you are going to have this idea of domination and I'm a winner and you're a loser as the way you see this life we live, then you are also going to be paranoid. The two have to go together. You are always going to feel threatened because you are always fighting to remain dominant. And your view of the world is that everybody else is trying to take your place away from you. Is trying to rip you down and become dominant over you. Hence, a lot of the fear that some men, not all by any means, but some men have of feminism and their hatred of the name, because they're looking at it through this domination win-lose mindset where they think that if women get equal rights, then somehow they've lost. Somehow they are diminished by that. And hence they fight so hard because they've been taught that they have to hang on to top spot or else they're a loser, which is the worst thing they can possibly think of. And so our ability as a society, I'm not talking about those of us in this webinar, but as a society, hence our ability to say about a group of people who did nothing except flee persecution, terrifying circumstances, and lack of opportunity to try and find a better life for themselves. Hence our ability to say, well, they don't deserve anything, we can shut them up for as long as we like, indefinitely, in fact, just because they tried to come here on a boat. How's there any logic in that? And I can't believe that the democracy that I thought I was a part of can lock up children. I mean, we saw that. I was just saying before that the only decent thing Novak Djokovic has ever done is draw attention to the plight of the refugees in that hotel, the Park. What hotel was it? Park Hotel, including that young man, Mehdi, who's been there since he was 15, almost 10 years. He's had no trial. There's been no charges laid. He's had no time in court, no time to defend himself, no time to put his story publicly. And I just don't believe in locking people up without a trial. I thought that was a basic right of the community in which we lived, and that it was not defined by the colour of your skin or the citizenship you held or the religion you believed in or the method by which you arrived. Because as it turns out, as a 5-year-old, I arrived by boat as a 10-pound pom with my parents. I'm not sure, and in fact, right up until relatively recently, every white or European or non-Indigenous Australia arrived by boat. Is there some weird psychological projection that we have that we know on some level that we took this place illegitimately, and therefore we live with a kind of psychic unacknowledged fear that somebody else might come and take it off us? Because in a domination mindset, a dog-eat-dog, winner takes it all, a view of the world, that's the way things go. And you have to be ever vigilant to make sure that nobody else takes what you've got off you. And that's why women have to save the world, because we can't continue with this mindset. It is clearly destructive. It's clearly not served anyone. It hasn't even served the men who believe in it. Men are much more likely to be victims of violence than women, much more likely. All those people who are terrified for their daughters are actually not acting logically. Their daughters are much safer than their sons. But the violence is almost exclusively at the hands of other men. So the weird thing is, men are not frightened of us, not really, much as they may be nasty about feminism. They're frightened of one another. And that's why I think that you see, or certainly looking at it from the outside, and I know there are many good and honourable exceptions to this, but that's why you see that so many male friendships are very tense, superficial, jokey, needly, you know, I'm only joking, but it's a bit barbed, a bit nasty, competitive. And there is a lack of intimacy often in male friendship, whereas female friendship, of course, is where we gain our strength. I mean, we only have to look at the bonds that have been forged with Grace Tame and Brittany Higgins to see how female friendship and support and intimacy, because those two women have not just bared their souls to one another, they've bared them to the world. They've told everyone their secrets. And by doing that, of course, they've liberated the rest of us to tell our secrets. And we are seeing, and Grace Tame referred to this in her speech yesterday, more men beginning to also start to tell their secrets too. Those very brave men, for example, who have stood up to the Catholic Church and talked about their abuse at the hands, or not just the Catholic Church, but a number of religious schools and institutions, and spoken about their abuse at the hands of priests, scoutmasters, teachers, you name it. This is wonderful. This is wonderful. This is a breaking down of this domination. I must show no vulnerability. I must always seem impervious, that to be a man is to be perfect. To be a man is always to be in control. To be a man is to always be strong, which is a devastating and inhuman way to live. And the men who try to maintain that are such sad bastards. If only you could get underneath the bullshit that they put up, like our Prime Minister, for example.
Yeah.
So it's this domination, toxic masculinity mindset that I think is really no longer serving us well. And there's a huge backlash at the moment because, and if you think about the religious discrimination bill, pernicious, ghastly thing that it is, and that debate last night in the Parliament, which I am sorry I could not bear to watch, but as I understand it, reading the news reports and things this morning, was pretty chaotic and shambolic and very inspiring in some moments and absolutely degrading in others. But the very fact that we could even be debating whether it is okay to discriminate against LGBTQI students and teachers, we keep forgetting that the teachers have not, in fact, been protected by the amendments, or gender fluid students who are looking, are not sure about their identity, or gender diverse teachers as well, of whom there are plenty, that we could even debate whether this is reasonable, whether this is somehow a human rights issue. I mean, it's only a human rights issue if you discriminate against them. It's not if you protect them. I mean, it's unbelievable to me. Mind you, I am very impatient with the whole debate because it's as if people have only just realised that private religious schools discriminate. Are you fucking kidding me? That's what they were built to do. That's what they've always done. And this bill won't make any difference one way or the other. Maybe a bit to the teaching staff, but not to the students. Those schools have always been able to say to the children they decide they don't want, you don't fit the culture. And they've been shuffled off. There's nothing new about that, and it'll go on. It's went on before this bill, and it'll go on after it. So I am a bit surprised that everybody, oh my God, they can discriminate on the basis. Yeah, but the most common reason they discriminate is because you're poor. That's the most common reason. And because we have become infected in this society with a win-lose mindset, with higher value children and lower value children, we accept that discrimination as reasonable and natural and worthy of public funding. So what did we expect to happen? They've just taken it to the next level. So, but that debate is indicative of something important and something quite positive in a weird way. It is indicative that young people are beginning to open that female eye, which all men and all women have, open that female eye much more sharply, I think, and in greater focus than any generation before them. And that is why there is this exaggerated, paranoid, deeply psychologically and emotionally revealing fear amongst the old style patriarchs of gender dysmorphia, gender fluidity, non-specific gender. That terrifies the living bejesus out of them, and I mean that phrase literally. The reason being that it indicates the beginning of this change from a domination, winner takes it all, masculine identity, white, Judeo-Christian, oppressive, really, way of looking at the world. We're training all our sons in particular to be winners and all our daughters to be the wives of winners, is the way that it used to happen. And those schools are still perpetuating that, don't get me wrong, but the students are no longer buying it. And that is terrifying the old guys and some of the old girls. What are they calling this lovely phrase? I think it is an Australian invention. It's absolutely marvellous for the women who support the old patriarchal domination worldview. Crumb maidens, they're called. which is a brilliant phrase, which is indicative of them taking the crumbs from their master's table and getting, a few tasty titbits by doing and saying the right thing for the men with all the power. So you can see how, because I actually think we're moving towards a time, slowly, but I think it's inevitable, if we can save the planet for long enough, we're moving towards a time where we can all just be human beings. And the fact that some of us identify as women, some of us identify as men, some of us don't like to be binary, nobody will care. It's not the issue. That's kind of terrific, I think. And I see this generation beginning to do it. And the fact that particularly Grace Tame, but also Brittany Higgins, refused to play the old game that we all played. And we all played it. The smile and be polite and be civil and be nice and don't rock the boat and don't upset the man in power. And I know your boss is a sexist asshole who pinches your bum at any chance he gets, but smile and be nice, smile and be nice. You catch more flies with honey, I used to get told. As you can tell, it didn't work for me. But nevertheless, we all played that game. When I saw Grace Tame's behaviour at the handover of Australian of the Year, for the first few seconds that I watched her, I was mortified. I had like a cold feeling in my stomach of discomfort and oh. And then I thought, why am I feeling like that? She's being honest. She doesn't like this man. He has patronised and belittled her and undermined her credibility, and he has refused to do anything concrete about the issues that she has been campaigning on for so long, and he has the power and he won't use it. She's being honest. So what's my discomfort about? Why do I feel all smile, be polite? And I thought it's all that old grooming that I had all my youth about you've got to placate the powerful. These powerful men are dangerous. Not just powerful men, but any men. They can be dangerous, really. And it wasn't false. As my sister said once, she said, men are like dogs. Most of them are nice, but some of them are vicious. And you can't tell which is which just by looking at them. And so to some extent, women have to treat all men, until they prove otherwise, as being possibly dangerous. What a terrible place for us all to be, not just women, but men too. My husband, for example, is very well aware that, if he's walking along at night and there's a woman in front of him and the street is pretty much deserted, that she will be feeling worried. He just automatically thinks she'll be feeling worried because she can hear male footsteps behind her. And so he will do something like cross over to the other side of the road or stop and pretend that his shoelaces come undone or he's got to make an important phone call until she gets a long way away, and then he'll start walking again, just to make sure that she feels okay and that she doesn't need to worry that he might be he doesn't feel outraged that she should think that all men are rapists or any of that crap that you get. He just understands that she doesn't know who the man is behind her. And we've been trained since birth to fear men. That's part of the domination mindset. If you're meant to be dominated by somebody, of course you're going to fear them because they don't make room for you. They don't respect you as an equal. They want to control and dominate you. Well, that's no recipe either for a successful relationship or partnership or intimacy or equality or love or any of those things that I think make life endurable, even when it's, very stressful and difficult and terrifying as it has been over the last few years for so many people. If you haven't got those, because it's all about domination. I mean, what was it Ruth Bader Ginsburg said? She said, something about, I don't have a problem with men. I just wish they'd get their foot off our necks.
Yeah.
She was describing domination.
Yeah.
And Rebecca West said, I don't know what a feminist is. I just know that I'm described as one whenever I don't act like a doormat. Well, you walk on doormats, you rub your feet on doormats. Domination. And so they dominate women, they dominate the earth, they dominate their children, they dominate the parliament, they dominate the sporting field, they dominate business, they dominate the military, they dominate other countries. No wonder they die younger than us. Must be exhausted from all that domination or attempts to dominate. I often think that the person that Donald Trump reminds me of most of all, apart from Joe Bjelke-Peterson, they both talk the same. Blah, 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 all these words come out and they don't actually mean anything. But apart from him, the person Donald Trump reminds me most of is the Wizard of Oz. You know that moment in the Wizard of Oz when you see him and he's projecting himself, I am the mighty Wizard of Oz, and he's actually a little tiny man, and there's all these wind machines and lights and tricks, and it's a circus performance. He's not real at all. He's not a wizard, and he's not even powerful. Well, to me, that's Donald Trump. He's a frightened little boy who never grew up. And now he's exercising his psychopathy on the world because domination is the only thing he knows, the only thing he understands, and the only thing he was taught to value. So women have to save the world because we don't need to be dominant. We can afford to be and love being collaborative. No, that doesn't mean we're always nice. Doesn't mean we can't be absolute pains in the asses. Doesn't mean some of us aren't crazy as cut snakes. Anyone who's ever worked in a volunteer organisation, and I am talking to grandmothers of refugees, must know how there are some completely balmy people who get themselves involved in voluntary organisations and cause enormous amounts of grief and trouble for everybody else. And they're often women. Of course we're damaged. Of course we can be unpleasant. Of course we can be a pain in the ass. I'm not talking about individuals. I'm talking about masculine culture, feminine culture. And those are just titles that we've put on them. They're just different ways of being in the world that we've decided, like the French have decided to make certain furniture female and certain furniture male. They aren't. That's just what they've decided to do. We've decided to make certain character traits male and certain character traits female. They aren't. It's just what we've decided to do. And in the process, we cut men off from half or most of the feelings that human beings all experience. You only have to watch a young boy being told not to cry when he falls and hurts himself, being told to be tough, being made to take risks that he's clearly very frightened of, to feel desperately sorry for little boys. I remember when I had my daughters and I noticed that they could wear any colour, play with a toy of any colour, colours, all of them. The full rainbow was open. But my friends who had boys, oh my God, blue, green, grey, a particularly dull shade of red, brown, but nothing else. So you're already, from the minute they're born, saying, oh, limit your expressiveness, limit your creativity, limit your joy, limit your gentle, soft, fey, imaginative side. You're all about practical. And we're doing less of that. Though if you go into, as I often do, having grandchildren of that age, children's clothing shops, you will still see that all the girls have slightly sexualised clothes. You know, it's really hard to buy a T-shirt that it's actually sun-safe for a girl. They've all got to have little cap sleeves and they're often low cut and it's bizarre. They're little girls. Yeah. But also, if they do have any images on them, they're rainbows, unicorns, bunnies, kittens. If you look at the boys, the things on their T-shirts are machinery, robots, cars, tractors. So again, domination things that take you places, dig things up, are vaguely frightening. A robot is, I think, more frightening than a servant. But otherwise, it's all predatory animals: wolves, foxes, sharks. lions, tigers, bears, predatory animals. The girls all have prey on their clothes. Great training, guys. No wonder that's what happens so often. We turn boys into predators and we train girls to know their prey. We've got to stop doing that. Absolutely have to stop doing that. But we still haven't. And if you try to, and you try to argue that for that in the media, which I've done often, you get called politically correct. Political correctness gone mad. That's an attempt at domination too. That whole phrase, political correctness, is a silencing phrase. It's to shut you up. So we have to, and we are doing, and people like Grace Tame are showing us how to refuse to be dominated. That's what Grace did with the Prime Minister. That's what Grace did in the press club yesterday when she was asked questions she thought were ridiculous. And she rolled her eyes and looked at Brittany and giggled and went, yep, no, and gave them nothing. Basically, she said, I won't be dominated by you and your expectations. Many years ago, because I'm a deep thinker, I watched a movie with my daughters called Labyrinth. Some of you may have seen it. It's got David Bowie in it. And it's about a young girl who's babysitting her little brother, and she's a teenager and she's very resentful. She doesn't want to. And she says this spell that she's read about in a book, which is brings the Goblin King, and he kidnaps, which is David Bowie, and he kidnaps her baby brother. And of course, she's horrified at what she's done. And now she has to go and get her baby brother back. It's one of those movies. It's lovely. It's beautifully done. And she has to enter a labyrinth and she has to solve all these puzzles. And, you know, she has to get through until she can finally rescue her baby brother. And she gets to the final bit and there's a riddle she has to solve. And she's completely stumped. And then she suddenly looks at the Goblin King who's holding the baby in his arms. And she says, but you have no power over me. And that's when the whole thing, that was the secret. She gets her baby brother back. She's back in her bedroom. Everything's gone back to normal. You have no power over me. And I think for the whole of recorded history anyway, women have felt that men have power over them. And I think it wasn't an unrealistic belief. They did have power over us. And many of them still want to have power over us. But since 1960 in particular, and the invention of the pill, women have been able to take power over their own bodies and their reproductive capacity, which is why reproductive rights are so important. And the argument about abortion that is couched in moralistic terms is utterly irrelevant. Reproductive rights are about women having power and control over their own bodies, which is the one thing all of us should have power and control over. Our own bodies, what we dress, whether we want to have a tattoo, how we want to wear our hair, you know, whether we want to dress like a bloke or dress like a woman, who cares? You know, it doesn't matter. If we want to pierce our bodies in all sorts of strange ways or wear weird decorations or put what other people think are ugly symbols on it, who cares? It's our body. We can do what we bloody well like with it. People often ask me, what do you think of the burqa? What do you think of the shade? Personally, they make me feel claustrophobic, really claustrophobic. But my view is this. No one, not the state, not a religious organisation, not a faith, not laws, not me, not anyone should tell a woman what she can and cannot wear. That's up to her. Let her wear what she wants. Let him wear what he wants. But slowly, as we've taken power over our own bodies, we have started to take power back in other ways. Psychological power, emotional power, intellectual power, academic power, more and more financial power. And all of those things are making inroads on male power. Not on men, on male power, which is a different thing. It's a different thing. And power, a lot of women are very, makes me itchy, this word power. I don't like it. It's a bad word. They think of, mad geniuses going, wah, ha, 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 I want to control the world, all that. Power is just agency. Power just means you can do things. When we want the light to go on, we turn on the power. That's all it is. And it's really important that women learn to step into their power, which includes refusing to placate, refusing to defer, refusing to be polite to people who do not wish you well. That was why women reacted the way they did. It's why they reacted to Julia Gillard's misogyny speech the way they did, because she took back the power from Tony Abbott in that instance, and he never quite got it back again. I read a wonderful article by Rebecca Solnit who said, we're in the middle of the backlash. We all knew the backlash was coming, but it's different knowing it's coming intellectually and actually living through it. It feels awful. And in the US, it must feel particularly awful because they're about to lose their reproductive rights in many states of the US. And she's an American writer, but she wrote this wonderful article about, and it made me feel positive. And we all could use some of that, I reckon, particularly at the moment. That basically the liberation movements, women's, LGBTQI, Black Lives Matter, all that kind of thing, grandmothers for refugees, everyone who's fighting for the rights of those with less power at the moment, is an unstoppable wave. That this is actually, she said, what we're seeing at the moment is the old domination control mechanism, which she describes as the dam, which has held all of that back for so long. But the dam is crumbling. It has cracks in it. Bits are falling off all the time. Little bits of the river that it's getting around the sides. And that in the end, the river is unstoppable and it will wash that dam away. And I thought, she's right. And that's why the dominators, the patriarchs, the old style, the religious right, and all those people are sounding ever more panic-stricken, ever more shrill, ever more white-knuckled. They can see the power slipping out of their hands too. They can feel it going. And so they're holding on really hard. And some of us are feeling rather crushed in their fist. And I'm afraid that the refugees currently in detention under the auspices of the Australian government are really being crushed in that same fear-driven desire to dominate. So one of the reasons we won't let them go is because it fills that need to dominate, to oppress, that makes someone else feel, that makes those old blokes feel powerful, which is horrifying when you think about it. It's like digging up the earth, approving more coal mines, that kind of thing also makes them again feel powerful. And they
Jane, sorry.
Yeah.
I was going to say there is an interesting request here from Petrina asking you to comment. Whoops, not that one. Asking you to comment on the number of women in Parliament. It's the latest question there.
Okay. Well, there aren't enough. 50% is not enough. And it isn't 50% anyway. I think it's 47% of the Labor Party and 30% of the Liberals. I don't know. I think it's really interesting how for women, we always think one's enough. Oh, there's a woman. We've ticked the woman box. We've got a woman on the panel. Got a woman on the committee. Got a woman, whatever. And we never think. What somebody said to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a very similar question. What number of female judges would you be happy with? And she said 100%. And she said, well, how many years was it 100% male? Why was that okay? I often talk about quotas. I'm a great believer in quotas. Absolutely, legislated quotas. And the reason I believe in quotas, I have three reasons. The first is we have quotas everywhere. Barnaby Joyce did not get to be Deputy Prime Minister on merit. I know this will astonish you. But he got it because it's a quota position in a Liberal National Party government. Deputy Prime Minister is always the leader of the National Party, whoever that person is. That's why it was Mike McCormack for a while there when Barnaby was in disgrace, and now it's Barnaby again. And that's why when he offered his resignation to the Prime Minister over that tweet where he said that Scott Morrison was a liar, it was a performance because he has no right to offer his resignation. It's the party room who decides whether he's the Deputy Prime Minister or not the Prime Minister. It's a quota position. And the cabinet is full of quotas. Every cabinet is full of quotas. They'll need representatives from this state and representatives of this faction and that faction and, you know, all sorts of different things. Quota. What? Sorry?
It's okay. I was just interrupted, but go on.
Oh, okay. There's quota. So we're perfectly happy to have lots of boards have quotas, have to have a staff representative, have to have people from interstate, quotas. That's all they are, quotas. So we're perfectly happy to have quotas for all sorts of people, just not women. No, not allowed to have them for women. That would be unfair. And then there is that killer argument, really, and that is this. Everyone's forgotten about the pesky 100% quota that operated in favour of men for about 2,000 years. And if we don't think that that has given blokes a leg up and that that's why they've gotten ahead, not merit, but absolute bias in their favour for thousands of years, then we're crazy. And you know what women are asking for? 30 to 40%, 50% at most. It's positively meek. If we were really going even Stevens, we'd say, 100% for 2,000 years and then we'll talk. I reckon it'd be an interesting experiment, but it ain't never going to happen. I would like to see as many people from different backgrounds in our parliaments as possible. I'd like it to be as diverse as possible. It is not diverse now. Most of the people in our parliaments are white. Most of the people in our parliaments now are private school educated. Most of the people in our parliaments now are male. This is not diverse, and they do not have a stranglehold on merit. They have a stranglehold on a domination mindset. Shall we go to questions? I can't hear you, Gabby. I think you're muted. Everybody's muted. I can't hear anyone.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I
Yeah,
can.
so just at the beginning or just before we started, we talked about who do we vote for? And I guess the grandmothers have always been non-partisan, but not anymore. So
Thank
maybe...
God. It's true. We can't be non-partisan anymore. But at the same time, I'm not going to tell you that the alternative is the answer to a maiden's prayers. But I think you have to go with the people you think are the best, and it may be of a bad lot. But I think we have to have a change of government. Nothing will change until we have a change of government. I'm very interested in the growth of the independents, particularly female independents, because I think that what that might do is push whoever wins more to the left. What we don't want is a Conservative or Labor government with a reactionary crossbench of UAP, FON, far right, because that'll pull them the other way. In fact, the money recently that's gone back to the ABC, it's not the largesse the government's claiming it is, but nevertheless, it's an increase, not a cut, or the restoration of money that was cut, some of it. I believe that has happened entirely because of the threat of the independents in those inner city seats. And they've done polling that one of the things that's losing them votes as Liberals is their attacks on the ABC. So that's in and of itself a terrific result for women power and for women finally standing up and saying, as they do at the Women's March, enough is enough. We need to change the mindset. We're not going to let the IPA win.
Great answer. Barbara, are there some questions that you want to?
Yes, there was a comment back when you were talking about religious schools from Julie, who took who disagreed that all private schools are the same.
They all discriminate. That's their job. They may not all be the same, but they decide who they will or won't educate. Public schools don't.
Yeah.
They're not the same. I'm not saying that.
No. She says, I would refute that all independent private schools are still teaching girls to become handmaidens, particularly those run by female religious sisters. Some of those ladies are among the most subversive feminists you will find anywhere.
Yes, I'm not convinced about the girls' school thing. The reason being that if you're going to have girls' schools, you're going to have boys' schools. Yep. And we know where the worst misogyny comes from. It comes from those boys' schools.
Yep.
So it might be nice for the girls in those schools. It's not nice for the rest of us who have to deal with the boys from those boys' schools. And it won't be nice for those girls either when they leave those schools. I'm sure there are some lovely feminists who teach in girls' schools. I'm quite convinced there are lovely people right across the education community. But the facts remain the facts. Private schools were built and developed to discriminate. That is their core. That's why they're called private, why they're called exclusive, which means to exclude. That's their raison d'etre. That's why over 85 to 90% of all kids with a disadvantage, including poverty, NESB, Indigenous, disability, you name it, go to public schools. They are excluded. They just are. And however nice the school may be within, it's a bit like Australia with the refugees. Lovely Australians. There's some very kind Australians who detest what we're doing to refugees, but we're still excluding them.
Right. There's another question here about what effect do you think that Clive Palmer will have on this election?
Oh, Jesus Christ almighty. I don't know. It's terrifying. I hope a lot less than he anticipates, but I think Clive Palmer is behaving as a kind of mischief maker, a bomb thrower, and a disruptor. There's this thing on the right where that's what they're doing. They know they can't win. So what they're trying to do is kind of destroy everything. It's a nihilistic approach. I have no more crystal ball on Clive Palmer than anyone else. I hope Australians are smarter than sometimes I think they are.
Thank you. Marion's commented here, unfortunately, so many people don't understand the preferential vote and think if they vote, say, for Greens, their vote will ultimately go to the coalition, even if they have Labor second and coalition last.
Well, the way preferences work, for example, in the Senate is you exhaust your quota. So basically the first 4 spots, first 2 go to the Labor, 2 go to Liberal, then usually 1 goes to the Greens, and then there's 1 contested spot. And for those, they go for less than a quota, and it depends on how many first preference votes you get, so number 1 votes, whether you stay in that count. And as somebody else overtakes you with number 1 votes, your preferences are then shared. And if you have put Liberal on your vote card anywhere, they may end up with some of your preferences, even though you definitely don't want to vote for them. But you no longer have to vote all the way to the bottom of the card, I don't think. You have to do the top 6, I think. But don't quote me on that. I'm not an expert on electoral rules.
Neza has commented, you can't be non-partisan, so we have to support the best party and then keep lobbying whoever wins. The battle must continue after the election because we need to ensure whoever forms government must fulfil its commitments and then some more. At the very least, the coalition must come last. We need to act, Linda says, we need to vote for actual party policies, not promises.
Yeah, people don't unfortunately vote on policies. That's a myth. They don't. They vote on emotion. And the two emotions that actually change behaviour are hope and fear. So those are the two emotions that drive votes. Generally, Conservative parties are more likely to win on fear, because what they're basically saying to you is don't take the risk. You might not like us much, but don't take the risk on these new blokes or new people. They're scary. You don't know what they'll do. And that's why you'll notice Conservative parties often use fear campaigns. Progressive parties tend to win when they win, and they generally win less often than Conservative parties, tend to win on hope. So if you think about the successful progressive campaigns in the last few It's Time's a classic, hope-driven campaign. Kevin 07, another classic hope-driven campaign. Yes, We Can, Obama, unbelievably classic hope campaign. Interestingly enough, Biden won on fear. He won because people were more afraid of Trump than they were of anything else. So in the end, that's what people vote on. They don't vote with their heads. They vote with their gut. And we have to, how much do they fear Morrison? Because I don't think they've got a lot of hope for Albanese. They don't really know him, but it might be fear of Morrison, fear of his incompetence, fear of his religiosity, fear of his lack of character, fear of all of that that gets him out. If Albanese wins, my view is it'll be more Morrison lost than Albanese won.
Right. There's a comment here from Yummy. What do you think about the fact that independents are only known for quantity for the one issue they advocate for, but they may behave in ways which are contrary to what you expect them to for other issues, e.g. Sally Steggall, who is good for climate policy, but she supported the cashless debit card, which is just horrendous.
Look, I agree with you. It's really difficult. You'll always find, I mean, that's the problem, is you're rarely going to find a politician that fits everything you want them to be and do. Sometimes, as I said, you have to vote for the best of a bad lot. And Sally Steggall has been very good, I'd say, on two issues. I'd be fair on that. On climate change, definitely, but also I think she has been very good with Brittany Higgins, Grace Tame, the sexual harassment, assault stuff. She's done well on. On the energy card, shocking, and yes, she is unfortunately, I think, a dry economically. So that's why she's, of course, though, very palatable to Warringah, and that's the problem. You know, that she won because she had the social, wet, economic, dry formula that the voters of Warringah actually wanted. So democracy is imperfect. We will always end up with representatives that nobody's completely happy with. But I think you have, as long as you're happy with some of it, I can't find a thing that Scott Morrison has done, first of all. And anything he has done, I've been absolutely horrified by. So
you don't think he's good at washing hair?
No.
In a little hose.
How creepy was that? And I thought,
Yes.
is he laying on the healing hands? Is he? When I went to the hairdresser yesterday, I actually said to him, is Scott Morrison lurking in your washing bay? Because I'm not going in if he is. He didn't know what I was talking about.
Nez has made a comment here. The only reason Palmer is so influential, apart from his money, I would say, is that our education system does not teach students how to differentiate between spin and reality, and to encourage them to challenge everything they read and search for alternative progressive sources of news. The media monopoly is what creates our brainwashed society. I would say, though, I personally and my husband have taught ethics at primary school for 5 years, and I think it's all completely voluntary because of Abbott, but I think that does go some way to addressing that. But you might like to comment on that, Jane.
Poor teachers.
Yeah.
They've got to do everything. They can't actually, they do teach critical thinking. But if a child comes from a family where no one does any critical thinking, where that's not a habit of mind, teachers are pushing shit uphill to get it into them in the classroom. It's there. You take a class of 25 kids and 10 of them will catch on to the critical thinking. And you'll think that teacher's fabulous if you've got one of those kids. But 15 of them won't. And it's because that's not what their parents do. And particularly if they have any kind of devout religious belief, which is very rigid, very hard to teach critical thinking, because that's the last thing the devoutly religious want you to do, because the point of a devout religious belief is that the answer is always the same. It's God. God is the answer to everything. So you don't ask too many questions because God is the answer. Already got the answer. People actively avoid thinking. They don't want to think. It's hard. It's messy, and often you can't come up with an answer, and it makes you feel a bit uneasy. And I don't think teachers can fix that. I think they can try, and I think they do. But I think really parenting, we are far, far too lax on parents and their responsibility for wondering about how they are training their own children. I mean, if we want to change the way, for example, women move through the world and how frightened they are of moving through the world, I really love this new move with parenting to teach little children that they have the right to say, I don't want to give grandma a kiss. And teach consent from a really early age. And as a grandmother, I've actually had that happen. I remember saying to my grandson, can I give you a kiss goodbye? And he said, oh, no, I'm sorry, I'm far too busy. He was 2. I said, oh, okay, I understand. Can I shake your hand? He went, with just the right amount of condescension, I suppose so. So we should. That's parenting consent. They can teach it in the classroom, but if the child isn't getting it in the home, it's superficial at best. That's the problem. Teachers do their best. The 3/5 of fuck all.
Right.
Jane, I'm very conscious of time. Are you able to go a few minutes over time, or do you need to stick?
No, I can go a few minutes over time if people don't mind. I've still got to push my shameless self-promotion about my book anyway.
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking. So if there's any last minute questions that Barbara has, and then we'll, love to hear about your book.
Yes. I think the only other is, what responsibility do you think that women have in promoting Indigenous issues?
Well, the same responsibility as everybody else. I don't like the idea that women have to become a bit the same as teachers. I don't like the idea, or mothers, I don't like the idea that women, teachers, mothers have to take more responsibility for being nice and inclusive and collaborative and all those things than any other people, because that lets blokes off the hook, frankly. I think we have the same responsibility as everybody else. Now, that doesn't mean we might not do more, because we might be the people who are taking our responsibilities seriously, but we have no more and no less responsibility than anybody else. And of course, every human being is responsible for treating everyone with respect, for being inclusive, and for doing their level best to understand the different histories, different life journeys, different belief patterns, different cultures that are around us, and to be enriched by that. That's part of your responsibility for being a human being.
Just one very quick last question. Linda asks, do you think grandmas for refugees are just too nice?
All women are a bit too nice. Not me. Not me. I'm not. I'm cured. Grace Tame clearly is cured, more cured than me even. And I think women have a tendency to be nice, who are brought up to be nice. But also it is a survival strategy. When you are a member of the subordinate culture, and when you look at the horrific toll on women of not being nice, or being perceived as not being nice, you can see why women default to niceness. And, you know, it's why women go in the caring professions, nursing, teaching, childcare, aged care. You know, we are the carers. We are taught to be sacrificing and to help others. That's a wonderful thing, but boys should be taught to do it too. And also, we should not be then taken advantage of by being paid shit, because it's seen as our duty to be caring, so we don't need to be paid properly for it. That is an absolute, it's a catch-22, and it's what a lot of women are caught in. So yes, of course, it's good to be nice and caring and nurturing and a good person. But when somebody crosses your boundaries, stop being nice.
Yep. I must tell you that my daughter is a midwife and received a pin from Perrichet saying thank you for all your valuable work during COVID. And she was so thrilled. It was better than the cup of coffee she got every fortnight when they got their last pay rise. Now, your book, please.
Okay. Speaking about not being nice and where being too nice can get you, on the 1st of March, my first novel for adults is coming out. It's called The Mother, and it's about a grandmother, in fact. Well, she didn't start out as a grandmother, but she becomes a grandmother as we go through the book, who very slowly starts to realise that her youngest daughter is not perhaps married to the man that his mother-in-law thought he was, and slowly starts to realise that he is in fact a coercive controller and has to make an absolutely dreadful decision. I saw that. Dreadful decision about what to do to possibly save the lives of her daughter and grandchildren. So it is about what women, it is, I've realised, and I never realised it until after I finished writing the book, that all my novels, the young adult ones about Elizabeth Tudor and this adult book about Miriam Duffy, North Shore real estate agent, that all my books are actually about the same thing. They're about women taking the power back.
And that's out on March the 1st.
Yes, it's Allen and Unwin. You can pre-order if you like via Booktopia or QBD, and it will be released as a wavelength audiobook as well.
It sounds like a great read and really relevant to what Jane's been talking about. It's basically, it sounds like the whole male culture is coercively controlling us. So
I think that's true. That's why we're so nice and placatory.
And I think we all probably know someone in that situation, if we haven't at some stage in our lives, experienced the same. So thank you, Jane. And thank you so much for talking to us today. We know you're really busy, and it's really made me think a lot about the things that you're saying and help me focus on what needs to be doing and, where I sit in everything. So thank you so much. And,
well, can I also thank you all for the work you do, which is long and hard and must sometimes feel almost hopeless, but there's nothing I admire more than what Joshua Wong said, who was a demonstrator in the Hong Kong, front lines, came out of jail, and they said to him, why, and he was heading back to the front line of the demonstration, and they said to him, why are you doing this? You can't possibly win. And he said, we fight on with no hope of winning. Love that.
Yes, yeah. But with the hope that maybe we will. But
if you don't fight, you won't win. But you must fight even if you feel like you won't win.
Yeah.
Can I just add very quickly, a procedural thing? There are a lot of interesting comments that we couldn't get to, and I have saved the chat. So if anybody would like a copy, they can contact Grandmothers. Would that be best, Gabby?
Yeah.
Okay, and don't forget the YouTube. This will be on YouTube, Grandmas for Refugees YouTube. I'll put the link there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jane, and let's hope we meet again sometime.
Indeed,
okay,
indeed.
And let's hope for a change in May. So
yes,
thank you and goodbye.
Vote them out.
Yes, we do our best. Okay, bye everybody. Thank you.